Yo, what's going on, family? We're trying something new here. It's a new setup, different angles. Just know this channel is very new, and so everything is exploratory right now. I don't really know what this channel is going to morph into. It seems like I keep wanting to go into this whole processing Christianity thing, and that might be it. So far I've changed the YouTube channel name to The Shore Somewhere Over Here based off the first podcast I did about this. I really like that name. Maybe I'll stick to it. But I also like this whole couch setup where it just feels relaxed. I don't feel as interviewee. Changes my tone of voice. It changes the way that the pace and cadence of my speech. And I can hold the mic right here. And so the audio might sound a little clearer as well, even though I'm in these high ceilings. So I've got this place in LA. I just moved out here officially about a couple of months ago. I was Airbnb-ing, and now I'm here. I want to talk about something specific. I think I've been trying to find a way to concisely and precisely address specific reasons why I left Christianity, and trying to just spout them off just at large, it seems like a difficult thing to do. Not because I'm like uncertain or not confident. It just feels so jumbled, and I'm trying to find a more formatted way to do that. And I think the only way I can figure that out, the way that my mind goes, is I can't try to plan it out. I kind of just have to keep trying stuff and see what works best. One idea I have is to have people interview me. I think I'm gonna have some people sit on this couch and just talk. I want to talk. I want to have conversations with non-Christian friends who I really respect, and also Christian friends that I really respect. And I can interrogate them and they can interrogate me. And I think that'll be much more helpful to get to the nitty-gritty of things, while also remaining a bit more entertaining, So today, I think the approach that I want to take is not so much why I left Christianity, but why I stayed. Some reasons why I stuck around, which may give some light. It may lead into why I eventually left Christianity. One apologetic argument that really held me, it had me in a stronghold for the longest within Christianity, was this argument of absolute morality. And people to this day, they they throw it at me quite often, and the idea is this, for those of you who are not familiar. Without a God, particularly the God of the Bible, but without a God to arbitrate standards and morality for humanity, without someone to say, here's what's good and here's what's bad, how can we ever call anything good or bad? It all really just boils down to preference. That's the argument, is that God is necessary because we need absolute morality. Otherwise, everything goes to shambles. Who's to say murder is wrong? Who's to say adultery is wrong? Who's to say stealing? Who's to say anything is really right or wrong? It really just boils down to 8 billion different preferences in the world. And this had me in a chokehold for the longest, because I felt that tension of like, how can I ever make any moral claim without there being this God of the Bible to say yes and no to? No matter how I try to reason with it, some people would say, so some objections to Christianity would be, well, how can a loving God, an all-knowing and loving God, allows so much evil to happen in the world. And the Christian apologetic response would be, well, what is evil? If there is no good and loving God, who are you to say that a child being murdered, the recent mass shootings that we have in this world, who you're allowed to love, for abortion, against abortion, genocide, women's rights. Who are you to say that any of those things, when women's rights are violated or children's rights or whatever, genocide, who are you to say that any of those things are absolutely wrong if you don't have some cosmic standard to appeal to? And it sort of kind of leaves you at a standstill. It's like, well, if God is so loving, why is there evil? It's like, well, how are you defining evil? Well, evil is XYZ. Says who? Because some cultures say that that's evil and some cultures say it's not. Who's really right in this conversation, right? And I just thought that was such a great argument to make back. I don't think that it's a great of an, nowadays, I don't think it's as great of an argument as it is a problem to be solved. And sometimes the answer to the problem, or the more realistic, more consistent answer to the problem, is not necessarily the most comfortable one. But I think what the issue is that I started to realize, one, this argument to absolute morality doesn't make the God of the Bible in particular, or just God in general, it doesn't make God necessary. It makes God useful. Because we could live in a world. It is possible. Necessity, to say that God is a necessity would be to say that that the world could not exist without it. The world could exist without an arbiter of absolute truth. We just wouldn't like it. It would leave a lot of space for gray, but it is actually possible. We could make claims to morality without an absolute moral giver. Would it make things more complicated and subjective and more gray? Absolutely. But it doesn't necessitate God. I think that was the thing that kind of hung me up, is as if it necessitated him, because I could not imagine a world where we could not make claims to absolute truth, because we make truth claims, and particularly moral truth claims, all the freaking time. And so it almost, the argument from the apologists would say, well, anytime you've crossed out the moral, the absolute moral giver out of the equation, you by default rule yourself out of the equation as well. You rule yourself out of the conversation. As soon as you say, well, I don't know what's right or wrong, it's like, oh, well, then you can't be in this conversation about right or wrong. Bye. You're gone. Checkmate, Christian, And so the argument goes that somehow God is a necessity, but I think it's more so it makes an absolute moral giver extremely useful. But the next point I have really 3 points to make to this. The next point that really sort of helped me sift through this, because next point, I'll just go to the next point because I'm ranting and giving too much context. The next point was that somehow I could never figure out how that argument was exclusive to the Christian, that it was unique to the Christian. Because anyone could say that. Like anyone who claims right to a moral absolute moral giver, whether that be a Muslim or it be Hebrew Israelite or a Jew or a Unitarian or some remote tribe with their own gods, Greek gods or whoever. Like, they all have some claim to that. They all have a claim to absolute truth, and it really just boils down to, well, who's righter, who's wronger. But it's not as if the Christian is unique to that. I think that may be more so of it's kind of portrayed as a Christian apologetic, but it really is more of a theist. It's just an argument for theism, rather than just a specifically Christian theist argument, meaning theist, like just an argument for a God in general. But like, well, if that's an argument for a God in general, then that doesn't really help your claim, because anyone can make that argument. And so that sort of cancels itself out. Obviously, that's not checkmate. That doesn't mean that it automatically rules out Christianity from the conversation. It just means I don't think that that's a leverage you can use. Now it just boils down to, well, which one's righter? Well, here's the issue. In order to, you find yourself in sort of a loop here, because it's like, well, let's find out who's righter. Well, who's deciding who's righter? We then become the judge of the gods that gave us judgment, right? You kind of find yourself in a loop. And, feel free to push back in the comments gently, conversationally. I haven't really thought through this stuff in a very long time, like at least verbalized it and wrote it out. Like, I haven't been engaged in this type of thought for a while, so I may be a little rusty, but I'm processing as I go. But that was a real big hang up for me. So that second point that I make is, well, that argument is not unique it doesn't seem very unique to the Christian. And if that's the case, that they all have that, then when you rule one of them out, when you rule that argument out, then it's like, well, how do we decide which one's righter? It really just boils down to religion versus religion, worldview versus worldview. One could argue, well, which one's more consistent? But why is that the standard? Obviously that's a good standard, I think, which one's more consistent. That's a good standard to go by. But why, who says that that's the and I'm just playing Christian's advocate here, because I think that's a good standard to go by, which worldview is more consistent, which makes the most sense across many different scenarios. But again, where does that standard arise from? If it doesn't arise from God, you find yourself back in the judge of the judger. And I think, within presuppositional apologetics, covenantal apologetics, I mentioned that a lot, but it's a very reformed approach to apologetics. You start with the idea that you don't judge the judger. We always start from the position of, not a position of ignorance, but a position of light. Meaning, I have the light, I'm going to argue from there. I'm not going to fake as if I don't know. I'm going to, a lot of times people try to argue from ignorance to work themselves. They try to sort of reverse engineer God. And so, consistency is a good standard to me, but who am I to say, right? Who am I to say? Feel free to push back on that in the comment section. My third point is kind of relative to the second point, or relevant and related to the second point, in that Christians, when you really think about it, the Christian apologist, the Christian theologian, the Christian YouTube commenter is still subject to the same thing that it leverages against those who don't agree with them. They are still subject to the accusation that they don't have access to absolute morality. The Christian has a faux absolute morality. I know, hear me out. I don't mean to be argumentative. I'm not saying this as a way to be I don't know, inflammatory or insulting, I know I have to kind of preface this because I know I have a lot of devout Christians that follow me. I need to speak candidly, though, and how I think. You may think I'm wrong, but the heart behind it is not to somehow, I'm trying to call it how I see it. So how I see it is that the Christian is also not privy to absolute morality. Example, or should I say analogy, metaphor, I'm not sure. I remember one time I was in college, right? And I had a friend. I'm not going to put his full name out. His name was Jimmy. Not the Jimmy that some of y'all may have seen on my other channel. This is a college friend. And I remember I was going to school in Texas. I was in East Texas. And this dude met a girl online, right? My friend, he's a teammate of mine. He met this girl online. And, you know, at this point, I didn't realize this is a whole other story as well. At this point, I didn't realize that they had never met before. I thought that they had met through, I didn't realize they just met online. I thought he had met through a mutual friend. She just happened to live in Houston, which was 4 hours away. And I remember it was September. His birthday's around sometime in September. And he said, man, my girl got me a pit bull for my birthday. I was like, that's crazy, bro. That's crazy. You got a good one. But you live on campus. How you going to have a pit bull? You live in the dorm. She's like, oh, no. She's going to keep it for me in Houston, but she bought it for me. I was like, oh, okay. She didn't get you a pit bull for your birthday. You don't have a pit bull, bro. She has a pit bull. The girl has a pit bull. You claim ownership to the pit bull, and she tells you can claim ownership to the pit bull, but you don't get to see it. You don't get to touch it. You don't get to directly interact with it. She may send you pictures, but it's not your dog. You do nothing with it. It's not your dog. I use it as an analogy for Christians who say, well, we do have the absolute arbiter of truth, who is God, Yahweh. And let's just say, for sake of argument, that is true. That there is the God of the Bible. He exists, and he, in and of himself, is good and right and ultimate reality. Therefore, he possesses all authority and power to decide what is actually good because he is the measuring stick. He is what we compare things to, whether it is good or right. You know, I'm sure there's a clock or I forget where it's at. Somebody can look, put this in the comment section. But how we know what actually weighs a pound or ounces or whatever, there's somewhere locked away in some really like airtight and very specific, scientific way, in some chamber somewhere where there are actually official weights, so that, because even though something may weigh a pound, they may say it's a pound of beef or a pound of steel or whatever it may be, it's all kind of like arbitrary. All scales are different. You know, things relative to gravity and space time and where you're at in the world, all that stuff can, like, there's so many variables. You got to have one thing that you can compare it to say, well, this is actually somewhere in the world there exists something that is actually exactly what we agree on as 1 pound. Everything else is relative to that thing. So that's kind of how morality works for the Christian. It's like, well, we have a thing that exists somewhere, and this is all relative to that. And we decide, if I ever need to know if what I own, this pound of steel, really is a pound, I can go and compare it somewhere in the world. And so my issue with that is, for Christians, is that you don't actually have access to it. And this may sound like a trivial thing. Please try to hear it. I'll try to do my best to explain it as best as I can. Again, I haven't verbalized this in a while. But please try to understand it, what I'm trying to get at here. And by my pleading, I mean, for a moment, entertain me. Answer the fool according to his own folly, as Proverbs would give it to you. Answer me according to my own foolishness. Entertain me for a moment. there are so many differing opinions about the Bible, and they vary across time, one, right? Theologians of 1,000 years ago often don't sound and approach the Bible as the way that we do today, though many theologians try to bridge that gap and look to the church fathers 2,000 years ago or whatever. But we're always going to be a victim of our own chronology, bound to our own very limited perception. Even the way that we read the church fathers, we read it through the lens of our own contemporary minds. As much as we want to try to remove those lenses, as much studying and context that we can grab, we're still bound by that, which makes it a relative point. So we have differing opinions across time. We have differing opinions across geography. Even all the Christians who exist in 2022, they vary. And I'm going to get there before you cut me off, because I feel the fingers going up in there. But wait a minute. They vary across time. They vary across geography. They vary across denominations. They vary across, even within people's own churches and denominations, there are differing views. And some may say, well, we agree on the fundamentals. No. Even that is a relative thing to say. What are the fundamentals? What fundamentally constitutes someone being saved, or what fundamentally constitutes what Christianity is at its core? And you may spout off, well, these are the fundamentals. You must believe that Jesus rose from the dead, so forth. You may find certain scriptures that would vouch for that. But even that is relative as you decide what is the fundamentals. And that comes through the lens of how you see the Bible, who taught you about the Bible, where you live at in the world, where you live at in time. And as much as you would like to think that you have access to this direct access to God's morality, it's a guess at it's an educated theological guess at best. And some people may say that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. I said, but even everyone's Holy Spirit will tell them something different within that denomination. And again, I'm not trying to say that just because there's differing views of the Bible among Christians that automatically rules Christianity out as a viable option. I'm not saying that at all. I don't think even the Bible itself would argue that. I remember, Paul has a verse when he's after there's in the book of I think it's 2 Corinthians. Again, I'm rusty now. 2 Corinthians, he's talking about some disagreements that are happening, some friction and conflict that's happening around communion in the Corinthian church. And he has a line that I always thought was a very interesting thing that he says. He says, he's trying to bring peace and unity and agreement among them. But in the midst of saying that, he says, though I know there must be factions among you to prove who's genuine. Meaning, I know there must be disagreements among you to prove who's genuinely going after the truth. Even Paul recognizes that, which is why I don't see denominations as an inherently bad thing. Denominations is the expression of Christians saying we really, really want to get to the truth, and we're trying to define what we believe that is. It's not necessarily, obviously, I think, a sort of secondary result of that is division. But ultimately, I try to believe the best about this is that I believe that Christians do it, and sometimes for division first, but oftentimes it's to try to unify around things. And we say, I believe that this is why, this is what the Bible means when it says this. This is how I believe that we're trying to rally around truth as honestly as we can. But even still, so what I'm trying to say is that Christians have relative morality among themselves. It does not, again, don't hear me saying that means that there is no absolute truth giver. That doesn't necessarily rule out God or rule out the Christian God's existence because there's relativity among Christians. All I'm saying is that the very thing that you're accusing other people of having of arbitrariness, it exists among you. You can't avoid it. Everyone has a differing view about, even those who are under the same umbrella, under the same denomination, under the same church, under the same small group, have disagreements on about what means what. And you'll find no shortage of people saying, yeah, I understand you, but this is actually the absolute way. And every one of them believes that they have the absolute truth. And so what you end up having is a bunch of varying absolutes, which is essentially relativity. And again, don't hear me saying that this absolutely rules out God or rules out the Christian God specifically. I'm just saying you are prey to the very thing that you're trying to accuse other people of. And the only thing that you have to show for it is that, well, I understand that, but we still have we do have absolute truth. It just exists in the ether. It needs to be downloaded. It's like it exists in the iCloud, but it's not on your hard drive. You don't have direct access to it. God has it, and he distributes it as he likes to. But even then, that's through the context of your own human wisdom, your own human experience, and everyone's bias about it. And so I just realized that you are a victim of the very thing that you accuse other people of doing. I hope I've made that argument nuanced enough, because I know there's going to be some pushback. I have not found any real way around that. And you can't really get around it. Even people in my comment section say, man, I really, I've had so many people be like, well, what you're rejecting is the Western Christianity. You haven't explored the Orthodox Christianity or Coptic Christianity or whatever, Eastern views of Christianity. And this is just another point of that. It's like, well, must I be under a specific rabbi or specific pastor or whatever to access that? And even then, there's disagreements among that. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Christians in this scenario is my friend Jimmy, who say they have a dog, but they don't actually own it. They don't actually interact with it. The dog exists in Houston. The morality exists in Houston. You don't ever actually touch it, but you can claim to it. So I have a dog out there. And here's the thing. I don't think that that's a problem. I think it levels the playing field to say, you know what? Morality is relative. We don't want to deal with that gray, but morality is in fact relative, even for those who claim that it's not. As soon as you say, well, we have absolute truth, I was like, all right, well, find you right now, if you say absolute truth, find 10 Christians. Find 10 Christian friends that agree on absolutely everything about the Bible. And what I'm saying is, one, you're not going to find it. Two, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think that that's a sort of like, boom, checkmate. I don't think it's a problem. I just think it's something you have to recognize, that you don't actually have absolute truth. You have a claim to a God who has absolute truth, but you in and of yourself and Christians as a whole don't actually have direct access to it. And so at that point, you have to have a different conversation, because even within churches, it's like, well, yeah, we have even if you say the Bible is absolute truth, and you have to figure out, well, how do we contextualize that for our contemporary time? What does it mean for husbands love your wives like Christ loved the church in 2022? What does it mean for women to be silent in church? Given the context, like, well, you got to understand the context of why Paul was saying women to stay silent, blah, 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 and you interpret that the right way, and you get the moral of it. All right, you distill it down to what's the point that Paul's trying to make of it, and then we contextualize that for our today's time. What does it mean to I don't know, whatever moral claim or moral instruction that's given in the New or Old Testament? What does it mean to now comport that transport that to the 21st century, you're going to come up with something relative. And again, what I'm saying, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I hope I don't have to reiterate this in the comment section. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that it's kind of fake when Christians feign absolute morality. Like, oh, we got it. But you don't in functionality. You have it in theory, but not in practice. And that's okay. That's okay. Just stop acting like you got it. That's all I'm saying. It's the same way I told my guys, like, bro, if your girlfriend has a dog, that's cool. You have a girlfriend that has a dog. That's cool too. Maybe from time to time you can go see it. But it's not yours. It's not. That's okay. It's totally okay. Just don't act like it is yours, is all I'm saying. Because it's not yours in function, only in theory. By the way, I'll end this with a story. A fun story that has nothing to do with Christianity, but everything to do with the just Jimmy guy. So one day we're supposed to go meet this girl finally. I didn't know. I thought he already known her and met her in person and all that. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go meet her up. It was like an hour out to this other school. We drive an hour out and we're like waiting in the, we're like, yeah, we're going to meet her up at this McDonald's. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm sitting at McDonald's, we're eating, waiting for her to show up, her and her homegirl. And I go along because I'm in college. I'm like, you got a homegirl too? Bet. Let me, what's up? I'm trying to see what the homegirl on. So, we're sitting here waiting to eat McDonald's. It's probably the last time in my life that I ever actually ate McDonald's. Sitting there eating McDonald's. And I'm just talking to him. I'm like, yeah, man. So like, how long y'all been dating? A couple months, something like that. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, when was the first time y'all actually like, met in person? He was like, oh, today. Like, this will be the first time. I said, bro, what? You brought me out? You ain't never met this woman before? No. We are waiting for this girl for like an hour. And I'm like, bro, she is not finna show up. You just got catfished. He's like, nah. Oh, she just texted me just now. Oh my God, it's crazy. They got in a car accident. Oh, shoot, for real? Yeah, she got in a car accident. You got to go to the hospital. I'm like, dang, okay. He's texting like, y'all good? Y'all okay? She's not responding. He's freaking out. Oh my gosh, something wrong with her. We're in a small town. There's only 2 hospitals in the city. So we go to one of the hospitals that's nearby, and we're trying to check on her like, yo, is everything okay? Is there a such and such that checked into this hospital? No, we don't have nobody here by that name that got in an accident. Dang, let's go to the other hospital. Go to the other hospital. Ask the same thing. Yo, such and such here? Man, she got in a car accident. Nope, nobody of that name that got in a car accident here. So we just waiting in a hospital parking lot. Next thing you know, she says, I'm good. We checked out, and we're still going to this party. The whole point was we were going to meet up at McDonald's and go to this party later on. It's like, we're headed to the party now. I was like, this woman got in a car accident, went to the hospital, and is going to a party tonight, all within a couple of hours, maybe less. I said, bro, hate to break it to you. She's not here. She wasn't in the hospital. This man did not believe me. He was resolute. He was absolutely sure that he had access to this girl in practice, not just in theory. I'm like, all right, bro, I'm right. He's my ride. I'm an hour and some change outside of my city. I don't have my car. I can't go nowhere. What am I going to do? So I'm with him for the ride. She's like, I'm at the party now. All right, cool. We're going to meet up. All right, we go over there. She's like, yeah, I'm in the parking lot. All right, where? We don't see you. Oh, I'm over here. We walk over this way. Oh, I'm actually over here now. Bro, she not here, bro. She playing you. No, she not, bro. No, she not. So, oh, now I'm inside the party. Okay, cool. You already went inside? Cool. Let's go inside the party. We go inside the party. Looking, it's packed. She's looking around for us. Like, yeah, I'm on this side of the bleachers. What I'm starting to think happened, because she knew the layout of the party. I think it was a girl that looked nothing like the girl he thought he was talking to. But she was there, so she was completely undercover. And she's probably looking dead at him. And just playing him. Because we stayed the entire party. The party ends, and he's still looking for her. He's like, all right, well, meet me outside. I said, bro, are you kidding me? We go out in the parking lot. This is actually making me angry now. I think about it, just to see how dumb this guy was in that moment. I'm like, bro, this is not real. This is a video game. She's playing you like a video game. We go outside. We're waiting at his car. The parking lot is getting emptier and emptier. And she's still claiming to be outside. She's like, well, now I'm over here by the dorms. We go over by the dorms. She's not there. I said, bro, he finally gave up and we drove home. Like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I had basketball practice in the morning. I'm like, bro, I was so mad. And he was still convinced that she existed.